Masaji Ishikawa, A River in Darkness, One Man's Escape from North Korea. Dive into the harrowing true story of Masaji Ishikawa's escape from North Korea in A River in Darkness. This powerful account exposes the struggles faced by ordinary citizens in the oppressive, totalitarian regime. Through Ishikawa's experience of family hardships, discrimination, famine, and societal corruption, readers will gain insight into the desperate situation many North Koreans continue to endure. This emotionally gripping narrative sheds light on the repressive nature of the country's political system and the impact it has on the lives of millions.
Misled migrants abandon paradise. In a unique historical event, over 100,000 Koreans and 2,000 Japanese citizens migrated from Japan to North Korea between the late 1950s and mid-1980s, seeking a better life. Upon arrival, they were met with widespread poverty, discrimination, and a harsh lifestyle, quickly realizing that the paradise on earth they had been promised was nothing more than a cruel deception. Embarking on an unprecedented journey, these hopeful emigrants were shocked to find the opposite of what they'd been promised upon arrival in North Korea. Sailors helping unload their belongings wore tattered clothing, indicating the locals' dire financial state. Their first meal of foul-smelling dog meat further shattered their high expectations. Ishikawa's family, like many others, was initially confined in a cramped, cold room before being assigned to a remote village called Dongcheonri. Influential connections were crucial for securing residences in Pyongyang, where the best opportunities were. With no such connections, they found themselves isolated and struggling. Once in Dongcheonri, the challenges continued as they faced persistent discrimination for being Japanese migrants. Ishikawa was verbally harassed on his first day of school, while his possessions were ridiculed. He learned to assimilate and adapt to local practices, such as wrapping his belongings in a cloth like the other students, in an attempt to fit in. Moreover, the family's educational and professional achievements held little value in North Korea. Ishikawa's mother, a former nurse and mathematics student, was denied work until she learned Korean. With no other options, she resorted to wandering local mountains for food that would supplement the low income earned by Ishikawa's farmer father. The dream of a paradise on earth crumbled for the misled migrants, who found their new lives steeped in hardship, discrimination, and struggle. Chasing dreams and rabbits. Ishikawa had high hopes of attending university and improving his family's life, but his fate had already been determined by North Korea's caste system. Despite dedication to his studies, he was classified as hostile and could only work as a laborer. School was rife with propaganda and grueling rituals, including the annual task of catching rabbits for soldiers' fur garments. Failure to catch 2 rabbits carried severe punishment, only mitigated by bribes from parents. When Ishikawa set out to uplift his family's status, his biggest dream was attending university. He believed that a higher education would pave the way towards a brighter future for all of them. Unfortunately, the unforgiving North Korean caste system stood in his way. It rigidly defined 3 paths for youngsters: university for the talented and well-born, the military for the strong, and labor for everyone else. Despite his relentless efforts and academic focus, Ishikawa's teacher marked him as hostile, putting him on the lowest rung of the social hierarchy. His dreams gradually slipped away, as he knew that pursuing them was impossible under such stifling circumstances. Ishikawa accepted his fate and aimed for factory work, which at least held the possibility of promotion. But, even this option was beyond his reach, and he was forced to follow in his father's footsteps as a farmer. School was no haven for Ishikawa either, as it was filled with an endless stream of propaganda and difficult rituals aimed at indoctrinating the children. Students had to study the revolutionary achievements of Kim Il-sung, the great leader. As an outsider, Ishikawa was skeptical, but he maintained the facade to avoid trouble. One of the most taxing school rituals involved students catching 2 rabbits each year, so their fur could be used to make winter gear for soldiers. The actual challenge wasn't just catching them, but keeping the rabbits alive as families often had no choice but to eat or sell them to survive. Failure to deliver 2 rabbits resulted in severe punishments, but resourceful parents could sometimes lessen the blow using bribes like cigarettes or alcohol. A Year of Repression. In 1968, military forces suddenly took over Ishikawa's village, creating a garrison and enforcing a strict regime led by Kim Il-sung's old comrade, Kim Chonbon. Throughout the year, villagers experienced abuse and suffered as essential resources were confiscated. After Kim Chonbon's removal due to rising tensions with Kim Il-sung, the villagers continued to struggle under the oppressive dictatorship. The government's corrupt rationing system and widespread nepotism pushed residents to rely on bribes and theft for survival, ultimately dehumanizing them. In the spring of 1968, life changed drastically for Ishikawa's village. Military trucks rolled in, with soldiers announcing the conversion of the village into a garrison, under the command of Kim Chonbon, Kim Il-sung's former comrade. The villagers soon experienced a fierce regime of repression as soldiers harassed and humiliated them, including Ishikawa's family, who were forced to relocate to another settlement. The soldiers terrorized the village throughout a year, pillaging farm factories, and confiscating important resources like livestock. As abruptly as they had arrived, they disappeared. Kim Chonbon's successful military modernization had raised suspicions in Kim Il-sung, resulting in Chonbon's purge. The totalitarian dictatorship that governed North Korea impacted all aspects of their lives, from the government's tight control to its rampant corruption. Food distribution was a prime example, with a strict rationing system that favored the well-connected. Consequently, vulnerable citizens like the elderly and sick often went without sustenance. The pervasive nepotism in North Korea forced ordinary people to rely on dishonest means, such as bribes and theft, to obtain essential items. This system stripped them of their humanity. A poignant memory from Ishikawa highlights this dehumanization. He carried a sick neighbor to a clinic, hoping for help. However, the doctor refused treatment unless bribed with money, alcohol, or cigarettes. The culture of corruption had entirely eroded any semblance of empathy or dignity. A bitter death and survival saga. The death of North Korea's great leader Kim Il-sung on July 8, 1994, left the nation in a state of shock as people mourned and feared their uncertain future. Unfortunately, the leader's demise didn't improve the people's living conditions but instead, led to a countrywide famine between 1991 and 2000. North Korea suffered from severe food scarcity due to harsh weather conditions and floods in 1994 and 1995 that decimated crops and agricultural infrastructure. While rations were initially provided, supplies soon dwindled until hunger pervaded every facet of life. Desperation resulted in a spike in crime, as people resorted to various means to survive in such an abhorrent situation. Upon the sudden demise of Kim Il-sung, the distressed North Korean population struggled to comprehend the ramifications. Ishikawa, who was swept up in emotions like many others, wondered what the future had in store for the people. Little did they know, a devastating famine was on the horizon. This era of hunger was ignited by disastrous weather conditions and floods that obliterated crops and the agricultural framework. What started as a ration system, providing each person with 1.5 pounds of grain, quickly deteriorated as supplies became increasingly scarce. Desperation led to unthinkable acts, even stories of people resorting to cannibalism, an act punishable by public execution. Furthermore, crime became a means to survive, with everyday life consisting of various shakedowns and frauds. One such story was that of Ishikawa's father, who was approached by a gangster proposing a deal to sell a whale's penis, an item sought after in traditional Chinese medicine. However, as Ishikawa's father attempted to sell it, he was robbed, leaving him unable to meet the gangster's demands. This unfortunate event led to regular beatings of Ishikawa's family members until his father, unable to bear the torment, withered away, and ultimately succumbed to his fate. Daring escape to freedom. Amid the despair and oppression of the famine-stricken North Korea, Ishikawa decided to risk his life for a chance to return to Japan. He aimed to send money back to his struggling family if successful. The most viable escape route was the treacherous Yalu River, which formed the border between North Korea and China. Ishikawa knew that anyone attempting his plan to cross it faced excruciatingly brutal consequences. Despite the chilling tales of those who were caught, like the infamous nose-ring case, Ishikawa remained steadfast in his determination. With North Korea's powerful influence extending into China, the two nations maintained an unholy alliance built on years of shared history, and China would often send North Korean defectors back to their tumultuous homeland. Unwavering, Ishikawa reached Hysan, a city bordering the Yalu River, and took stock of the heavily guarded banks. Rifle-wielding soldiers stood at 50-yard intervals, leaving him uncertain of successfully crossing. But luck intervened on his third night, as torrential rain obscured the soldier's view, providing him the opportunity to swim across the tempestuous river. At the brink of completing his daring escape, the river's relentless current hurled Ishikawa into a rock, rendering him unconscious. When he awoke after 2 days, he found himself next to a happy, wagging dog, a pet rather than a source of food, a sign that he had made it to China. Despite the harrowing journey and significant risks, Ishikawa had triumphed in his quest for freedom and a better life for himself and his family. A perilous path to freedom. After his daring escape from North Korea, Ishikawa reached out to the Japanese Red Cross for help. Their astonishment at his story led them to support his return to Japan, though the process was fraught with constant anxiety and danger. Ishikawa's journey was marked by paranoia, as even the smallest interactions incited memories of the harrowing tales he'd heard about escapees being caught. When he finally arrived in Japan, adjusting to life outside of North Korea proved to be challenging, as he struggled with cultural assimilation, finding employment, and the lingering shadows of his past. Rescued by the Japanese Red Cross, Ishikawa faced an anxious wait for his visa to be approved. Terrified of the North Korean secret police, he avoided leaving his room and took cautious measures when answering doors. Supported by the Japanese consulate, Ishikawa eventually received a ticket to Japan, though the ever-present fear of being hunted by the North Koreans followed him. Constantly worrying his cover would be blown, Ishikawa was shown compassion by the Japanese consul's wife, who lent him her husband's suit to disguise himself and guided him through an underground tunnel that provided safe passage to the airport. Reunited with Japan after a 36-year absence, Ishikawa faced immense challenges in adjusting to his new life. Much had changed, and he struggled to adapt to Japanese culture and find gainful employment. His lack of employable skills left him dependent on government welfare. When opportunities arose, Ishikawa still could not escape his past, as speculation surrounding his origin led to further insecurity and job losses. Ishikawa's isolation and unemployment restricted his ability to support his family back in North Korea. Tragically, he soon learned that his wife and daughter had succumbed to starvation, marking a poignant realization of the bittersweet nature of his hard-won freedom.
Masaji Ishikawa's A River in Darkness provides an eye-opening and heart-wrenching perspective on the desperate realities of life in North Korea. The book leaves readers with a lasting impression of the systemic issues, such as discrimination, corruption, and poverty, that continue to plague the country. Ishikawa's successful escape story encourages empathy and awareness for those still struggling under the repression and suffering in North Korea. This book not only highlights the importance of human rights advocacy but also serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of daunting adversity.